Today we're going to get into another little new trick, and this new trick is called a branching control structure. It's also known as an if-else statement, and if and else allows us to choose which pieces of code we want to execute. And so to demo this, we are going to be building a temperature calculator that allows you to choose whether you want to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit or from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And so let's get going. So the first thing I want to do is I want to welcome the user. And so to do that, I'm going to create a little user interface here very quickly. Number sign times 60. We'll print a couple lines of that, copy and paste that down here. And then in between that, I'm going to say, we're going to go two of those. And then we're going to say plus temperature calculator close calculator. There we go. We got it. And we're going to center that in a line of 60 minus 4 is 56. And then we'll create two more of those. Okay, so what we've got so far is this little design here for our nice little design. And then at the end of that, we are going to put in an extra line break. Okay, so this adds one line break. If I wanted to do two line breaks, I would just do that. Each one of those, the backslash n is it's called an escape character. Backslash n is a new line character. So it prints a new line at the end of that, which gives us an extra line break. So print, we're going to say, would you like to convert? And for the purpose of this one, I think I'm going to use the triple from F to C or C to F. Okay, so if I run that and give myself a little more space here, you can see here, there's that. And let's throw a new line character at the end of that too, just to give it a little bit more white space. I like white space in my designs. And so next, what we're going to do is we are going to say str choice, and we need to get from the user some input. So we're going to say input, and we're going to say what do you choose? So to give them a more guided choice, I think what I'm going to do here is give them a little menu. So I'm going to print one, press, no, let's say enter 1 for F2C. And then we'll print enter 2 for C to F. Okay, so let's run that. There we go. There's my little menu. It tells them what to enter. So they'll enter 1 or 2. So now they enter 1 or 2. This is where the magic happens, so to speak. So we're going to say if str choice is equal to, and note there's two equal signs here, unlike this where we say str choice is equal to whatever they input. What we're saying is str choice equal to 1. And it's a string here because remember, anytime users input anything, it's always going to be a string. So if str choice is equal, we're saying, is it equal to 1? If this is true, that it is equal to 1, then, okay, notice there's a colon at the end, and I'm indenting. So every piece of code that I want to happen if str choice is equal to 1. So in other words, if they enter 1, I'm going to have indented here. So what do I want to do when it's indented? Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to ask them to enter the temperature. Okay, str temp. Let's be more specific. Str Fahrenheit, because we're entering the Fahrenheit, equals input, enter the temp in F. Now I'm not going to try and spell Fahrenheit because honestly, who wants to do that? That's just too much work and too complicated. I'm just going to put F there. And next thing we want to do is change it to a float. So again, at this stage in the game, we are just going to assume that they enter a number. And if they don't, it's going to produce an error, but we're just going to do that. Now, an easier way to do that would be to say FLF, or float F, equals input, and then put that all inside that float function. I'll do that on the next one, but for this one, I'm going to leave it spelled out, just so you can see that it can be done both ways. So the next thing we need to do is we need to do the math. So FLC, that's the Celsius temperature, is equal to float Fahrenheit, and then we're going to subtract 32 degrees, and then we're going to divide by, so the first thing we're going to do is subtract 32, and then we're going to divide by 1.8. Okay, because the temperature, right, this is Fahrenheit. If we have the Celsius and we want Fahrenheit, we're going to multiply times 1.8 and then add 32. If we want to go the other direction, we're going to take Fahrenheit, subtract 32, and then divide by 1.8. So we just do the opposite to go the other direction. So there we go. And then print. Let's start out with a new line to give us some room up in front. And then we want to create an F string here. The temp in C is, and then we do FLC. Okay, so that is choice number 1. Now, they're either inputting 1 or 2, but they might put in a third option, which is anything else, so we can at least catch that error. So the next thing I want to do is we're going to do elif, and that's the second choice. str choice equals 2 equal signs and then 2 in quotes. And then we're going to take this and we're going to do the Celsius version of that. So I can use some of this over again. Actually, let's just copy that whole piece. No, change my mind. I'm just gonna go from scratch. strc equals, and this time I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to say input, and we're going to say enter the temp in C. And instead of doing this extra step, I'm just going to modify this. I'm going to say FLC, and I'm going to convert it to a float right here on this line by wrapping a float function around that. Now, notice I'm basically doing these 2 steps all in one line of code here. So this is just another way to do it. The thing you need to remember is that every time you have an opening parentheses, you have a closing one that corresponds to it. So I've got to have 2 over here because I've got 1, 2 over here. So just make sure you do that, otherwise it'll get you. And then the next thing I need to do is calculate the Fahrenheit. And to calculate Fahrenheit, we go FLC times 1.8, and then we add 32. I don't need parentheses because the order of operations says that the multiplication will be done first. And I am going to cheat and copy that line because it's a little easier to just change things around a little bit. Okay, so there we go. And here's our calculator. There's one more thing I want to do. And notice all of my code here is indented inside the if and elif. There's one more thing. If they choose something other than 1 or 2, I'm going to give them a little bit of a reprimand here and say, print, that is not a valid choice. Okay, so that way, if they pick something other than 1 or 2, it doesn't have an error or just do nothing. It at least gives them some useful feedback. So if this is true, then it does this. If this is true, then it does this. Otherwise, else means otherwise it does this third thing. Now, note, if this is true and this is true, it will only do the first one. So the minute it finds something that's true in an if-elif branch, it's just going to do the first thing it finds true, and then it's going to skip the rest of that. Okay, and then down here at the end, not indented, I'm going to say thank you for trying my calculator. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to point out that the unindented code is what gets run after this branching section. So no matter what happens here, it's still going to print this at the very end. And I'll put a new line character at the beginning there. So let's run that. Stop and rerun. Okay, so there is my menu. What do I choose? Let's go 1. The temperature in Fahrenheit, 64 degrees. Okay, so the temperature in Celsius is 17 with a lot of decimals. And then it says, thank you for trying my calculator. Okay, so now if I want to fix that a little bit, okay, I can put a format code in here, and that will fix that. So let's go back, let's go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So 2 degrees Celsius, or what degrees Celsius? Let's go 50 degrees Celsius is 122. Now we've got the 2 zeros. And of course, at the end, it says, thank you for trying my calculator. So that is a really simple temperature calculator that demonstrates how to create a branching code using if, elif, and else. Remember, if is required. Elif is not required, but you can have as many elifs as you want. And else is not required, but you may only have 1. So that's sort of the pattern that you want to keep in mind there.